Hello, everybody. Welcome to Joe the Lawyer. This is an unannounced live stream episode where I want to talk about a couple of things. For the first few minutes, I'm just going to wait and see how many viewers we can get. So if you want to fast forward a little bit, if it's your first time viewing and you want to get right to the content, you can do that. Or you can stick around and we will see who we get to bring into the room. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. My name is Joe Pometto, Joe the Lawyer. I am the host of this channel called Joe the Lawyer, where we cover. I can't even talk today. I can't talk today. I had a long day at work. Where we cover legal news, legal information, do legal analysis. I'm a practicing criminal defense attorney in Pittsburgh, PA. I also do family law, injury law, a little bit of everything, anything I can do to help my clients. I find the law fascinating. I'm here to talk about the law and legal cases that come up in the news. Today, we are going to talk about a couple of things. Hello, Adam. Hello, Erica's Adventure. Thank you for joining me. Why are you asking if I'm having a stroke? Some people don't like. They want me to talk. They say, Joe, talk normal. Talk this way. Talk that way. Look, Joe's gonna talk the way Joe's gonna talk. Okay. No stroke happening. Just a long day at work. We are going to talk about the Cowboy Load. The Cowboy Load and what may have occurred in the Alec Baldwin shooting, because I'm told that the gun that went off and the gun that he shot was an 1800 style revolver, and there are special issues with a weapon like that could have led to the shooting that we saw. Additionally, I want to talk about the three big trials this year. The Derek Chauvin trial, the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, and the trial of the McMichaels, which has been referenced as the Ahmaud Arbery trial. It's a little bit interesting how trials can sort of, in the media, they sometimes get labeled for the defendant and they sometimes get labeled for the victim. Sometimes get labeled for the defendant, sometimes get labeled for the victim. And I don't really know what to make of that, right? We call the Oj Simpson trial the Oj Simpson trial. There's no reason it couldn't have been called the Nicole Simpson trial, or whatever her full name was. I really don't know. I can't remember. Nicole Goldberg? No, we named that trial after the defendant, but the Ahmaud Arbery, that trial is named after the victim. Kyle Rittenhouse, named after the defendant, not named after the victim. And for whatever reason, Derek Chauvin, I think that's labeled more as the Chauvin trial than the George Floyd trial. But what do I know? That's something maybe we can think about. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I got 4 viewers here. We're going to talk about the gun that was used. I got some interesting comments, and I'm working on bringing a couple of I don't want to say firearms experts, but people with a lot of experience and knowledge in firearms onto the show to talk about what happened with Alec Baldwin. Also people who can explain a little bit better, well, I don't want to say a little bit, a lot better than me about what goes on movie and film sets. It's not something, I've never been on a movie or film set, so I can't really speak to that as far as personal knowledge is concerned. But more and more information is coming out. Alec Baldwin gave his interview with George Stephanopoulos. He said he didn't pull the trigger, but he did say that he did something with the gun, something very interesting. So in just a couple more minutes, I want to just see if I can get a little bit more of a crowd. I know I didn't advertise this one, but a lot of people tend to jump on whenever they see the live stream going. So let me just build it up for a couple more minutes, and then I'll dive right into the thoughts that I was having today. What is a defense for Alec Baldwin since he claims he didn't pull the trigger, yet he pointed the gun at the person? Excuse me. He's actually, that's a good question, Adam. There's basically two, I don't want to say two because there's actually more than that. We can get really detailed, but I'm going to talk about two states of mind that generally have to be proven in the law to hold someone guilty or liable for something. Two states of mind. And the two relevant states of mind here are intentionality, and let's say negligence. Intention and negligence. Intention and negligence. Now, most of us have a very clear understanding of what intent means. And a good example is a homicide, first degree homicide, requires the intent to kill, and oftentimes also requires a degree of premeditation. So it can't just be that you intended to kill in that moment. It must be that you had more than just a single moment where you shot the person, like the heat of passion. It's like you thought about it and then you shot them, and you did it on purpose. You meant to do it. You had a reason, a plan. You acted according to your free will in order to shoot or do harm on that person. That is specific intent. Specific intent. There's a form of general intent as well. But we're gonna stick with intention generally before I have to teach an entire law class. But so one of Alec's so for a lot of the crimes they could charge Alec Baldwin with, they would be able to say, they would have to prove that he did it intentionally. But I believe that the evidence shows, and especially from his statements and everything, that he didn't do it intentionally. It was an accident, a tragic and fatal accident, but clearly an accident. I don't think anyone would try to argue that Alec Baldwin shot this woman intentionally. Therefore, we can rule out any of those intentional crimes with specific intent. Gone. Put them to the side. So he doesn't have to deal with those. So what does he have to deal with? He has to deal with the accident part. And under the law, there's a few different standards, recklessness and negligence, but I'm going to focus on negligent. What negligent means is, I'll give you one short, quick, and dirty definition, is that you didn't mean to do it, but it happened anyway because you didn't prevent it from happening. And negligence was actually a pretty hard concept for me to wrap my brain around in law school. Now it seems so clear to me. But negligence is essentially anytime you undertake an activity, you have a duty of care. So for example, a perfect example is when you're driving a car, you need to know the rules of the road, follow the rules of the road, and follow them carefully. And if you veer too outside of what normal behavior would be while driving on the road, you can be held responsible for causing an accident or violating a traffic signal. That would be negligence. Okay? And that's what Alec Baldwin would have to fear here. Some sort of unintentional crime, such as involuntary manslaughter or third degree homicide in certain states, or recklessly endangering another person. Those don't require the intent. What those crimes say is that you were engaged in this activity and you should have been more careful. And if you were not this careful, you can be held liable or found guilty of a crime. And the four elements of negligence are duty, breach, causation, and damages. So first, when you're undertaking an activity, there is a duty. It's called a standard of care. You have a duty to do that task. It's an affirmative duty on you, which is rare in the law. But you have a duty to perform that task in a careful and knowledgeable way. Okay? And if you don't do that, it's called a breach. So you've breached that duty. You've breached that duty. And then And then did your breach cause the damages? That's the final two elements, causation and damages. The argument here against Alec Baldwin would be, did he have a duty to be more careful when firing the gun? And when he was not careful enough, did he breach that duty because the gun fired? And when the gun fired, did it cause harm? Now, a couple of those elements will be easy to prove against Alec Baldwin. The causation and the damages part, right? The bullet, see, and you wouldn't, let's say if all of those the things that happened and the bullet did not hit anybody, he wouldn't be able to be held guilty or liable for a negligent crime. He wouldn't be able to be held guilty or liable for those because there would be no causation and damages. But here you have causation. The bullet fired, it shot two people. It caused, and the bullet firing caused damages. The people were very grievously harmed. So what do we have to look at with Alec Baldwin's case? Did he have a standard of care, and did he breach that standard of care? So the main argument against holding Alec Baldwin responsible for this is that he did not breach a duty of care. And that is because in this context, he did not have a duty of care. In this context, the duty of care was on someone else. And when he was told that it was a safe gun, that took even more of the duty off him. It took even more of the duty off him. And that may be enough for him not to get charges or to be held guilty or liable for what happened. Duty, breach, causation, and damages is the relevant analysis here. So his argument will be, his defense will be, there will be a couple of facts. It's number one, it wasn't my responsibility to clear the gun. I've been on many movie sets. This is how movie sets operate. Someone else clears the gun. Number two, I was under the impression that the gun was cleared because the director handed me the gun and told me it was a cold gun, and that can relieve him of any liability. Now, what would jam him up is if a judge or a jury or the DA tried to argue, well, no, you actually have a greater duty of care rather than just not being responsible for loading the gun and being told that the gun is cold. There's an additional duty for you to check the weapon itself. And that would be the argument to convict. So that's sort of where I think the rubber meets the road as far as holding him liable for this action and or getting him off. But, we got a couple people in here. Adam and Erica's Adventure, thank you very much for tuning in. If you guys are still there, drop me a comment. I'm showing 3 viewers. We're going to go ahead and we are going to do the same time sip. And then we are going to go into a couple of the topics that I wanted to talk about. Probably go for about 10 or 15 minutes. And, if more people jump into the chat, I might go a little bit longer. All right, everybody, cheers with me. It tastes better when we sip together. I got some iced tea out of my Steelers cup, which was bought by my friend and a regular viewer of the show, Tom Castro. Thank you very much, Tom. Cheers. Okay, so someone in my comments made me aware of something that's called the Cowboy Load. Okay? And I had no idea what the Cowboy Load is or was. And this is what I was told. And this is the weapon that was involved in Mr. Baldwin, in the shooting here, okay? And this was from Grip for Us, and if he wants to come on the show, I might have him come on so we can talk about this. Cheers from the Bills Cup. Bills are having a heck of a year, Adam. Grip for Us says it was an 1800s period revolver. They were known to fire when the hammer was hit. Thus, the practice of the Cowboy Load. Only 5 rounds in the cylinder with no round under the hammer. So that was interesting to me. And so I did a little bit of research about what the Cowboy Load is. Oh, well, we don't want to watch a YouTube video on it. I'm going to explain it to you. You're already watching a YouTube video. Okay. And it talks about how safety mechanisms on these weapons. We'll start right here. Safety mechanisms were not really there yet. This means that a hammer on a gun in its resting position was actually resting with the striking pin right on the cartridge. There's no other way of saying it. A little bump on the hammer could cause an unwanted shot. And there were many opportunities for such bumps. Can you imagine a cowboy riding on a horse with the revolver flopping around? An accident was waiting to happen. That's why up to this day, it is recommended to load 5 rounds only and to leave one chamber empty. Then the empty chamber can be turned to be right in front of the hammer. In this way, the revolver will never shoot by accident. Of course, you can load all 6 if you are in a shooting range or are not planning on going anywhere. But if you are about to go on a walk or a ride or a horse, you should not fill up the cylinder. Well, is this what happened in the Alec Baldwin case? Well, let's see what Mr. Baldwin says here. In the scene being rehearsed, I would have cocked the gun and I said, "Do you want to see that?" Hutchins told him yes and instructed him to tilt it down a little bit. He said, I cocked the gun and I go, "Can you see that?" And I let go of the hammer of the gun and the gun goes off. Boom. So here's what all this this is fascinating. Here's what all this says to me is maybe this puts even more emphasis on the armorer on the set and the director on the set. The armorer should have known that a 6-shooter, especially an 1800 style revolver, would have this type of issue. It's well known. It's called the Cowboy Load. This is nothing new. Okay? And any gun, any bullet in the chamber actually has a pretty good chance of being fired. So it's not so much that this gun, when I first heard about him not pulling the trigger, I said that's ludicrous. That's ludicrous. But then when I learned about the Cowboy Load, I said, actually, this is a well-known and well-documented occurrence that's probably been around for 200 plus years. So it's a known hazard on this weapon. It's a known hazard. So it's not really a 1 in a million thing. I mean, it's a 1 in a million thing if they had a 9mm, 2015 style Glock with a safety. But with this type of gun, it very easily can go off accidentally, and it appears that's exactly what happened. He cocked the hammer. The bullet was in the chamber. In the chamber. In the firing chamber. So, to me, this puts more emphasis on the armorer. It puts more emphasis on the director. They should have known that this type of weapon had a specific hazard like this. And you should be extra careful when dealing with this type of gun. Because it can go off easily and accidentally. It can go off easily and accidentally. So, this is another thing that I read in my comments, Grip for Us. It was called a blocking rehearsal. The director of photography and the director walked the actors through the scene to block, work out the best camera angle and actions movement. First assistant director who handed off the gun, not the director or actually directs the action and actors. A set is a bit more complicated, but too much to describe in a short post. So, also on here, grip for us. The actors don't normally check a weapon themselves. Who should be the armorer should be the only person handing the weapon to the actor. Whoops. Demonstrates the condition of the weapon to the actors and crew immediately before handing the gun to the actor. Note, the armorer takes possession of the weapon after every rehearsal and after every take. So that goes more back to Baldwin likely not having any criminal responsibility here. There could be a civil suit, which, as we all know, the standards are lower. But, the armorer and this director, I think, really got to watch out. They really got to watch out. And they still don't know. They still do not know how the bullets got onto the set. How the live bullets got onto the set and into the gun. And if they find out who did that, that might show some additional responsibility, criminal and or civil. But it's crazy to me. I thought, he said he didn't pull the trigger. I thought that was ridiculous. But now it makes sense he didn't pull the trigger because he was dealing with a 6-shooter where an accidental firing can happen. Going back to what I said at the beginning of this live stream, and when it comes to negligence, I'm moving further and further away from any liability being put on Alec Baldwin. I'll take that as a loss because I did think that he was probably going to face charges. It looks like that probably isn't going to be the case. I still think he's already been sued civilly. Excuse me, but criminal charges don't look likely, so I'll take that as a loss. I predicted. Let's see. I'm keeping a little bit of score here. I predicted the outcome of the Chauvin trial. I predicted the outcome of the Rittenhouse trial. I hit those two. The Arbery trial. I actually thought that they were going to get acquitted. Now that was a soft prediction, and I was wrong there. And I think I'm wrong on Alec Baldwin being charged. But I'll tell you this. I'm going to make a new prediction out of this. I think the armorer has some criminal liability coming. I think the armorer has some criminal liability. And I'll make that prediction. And I think there's a decent chance that assistant director does too. But the more I learn about this, the more I don't think Baldwin is going to have liability. I originally thought that he pointed the gun and he pointed a gun and he pulled a trigger. This actually helps his case that in fact never happened. And I don't think there's any reason not to believe him. Especially with this type of weapon. He probably knows now with a revolver what can happen. So it'll be interesting to see where his acting career goes. Is he still going to want to act with with firearms? Sad, very sad and tragic. Very sad and tragic overall. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to talk about in this live stream was the three big trials that happened in the past year. When I'm talking about the Chauvin trial, the Rittenhouse trial, and Ahmaud Arbery trial. And, my prediction was wrong on Arbery. I thought those guys were going to get off, but the more I learned about the case, and I think that case was a bit more complicated than the other two. And the reason for that is because it implicated self-defense and the right to a citizen's arrest. But the more I learn and watch that case, I think the jury got it right. And the problem with the Arbery case was just that these men didn't have enough. When the Roman Empire and the Roman army wanted to go to war with the country, they would find a reason. Right? That's why we have the term casus belli, right? It's like you find a reason when you want to go to the war, you need some reason to latch onto to start the war, right? The casus belli. Well, the problem, and the Romans were known for fabricating casus belli when all they really wanted to do was invade and take over a country for conquest purposes. Well, that's sort of what happened with these three guys. I think the jury and the judge decided that there was not enough of a casus belli here for those men to take the aggressive approach to Arbery that they did. And without that firm standing, that firm reason for going after them, it put them in a lot of jeopardy and damaged their ability to assert self-defense, even though at a certain point, Arbery grabbed the weapon and was throwing his fists. The fact that they created that situation took away from their ability to claim self-defense. I will say this, though, about that case. I think of the Arbery case, like Chauvin with his appeals probably isn't going to get anywhere. But the Arbery case, I think it has a pretty decent chance of getting appealed and those guys getting a new trial. Couple of issues there, especially the judge's interpretation of the citizen's arrest statute, and a couple of other, just the general interpretation of self-defense could lead to a decent chance that case gets overturned. Jeff, weapons of mass destruction. What do you mean by that, dude? What are you talking about? Really looking at it, I think the jury probably got it right. And then you look at the Rittenhouse case and everything that was said in the media about that case and everybody jumping to conclusions and making assumptions, and it really looks like the jury got that right too. And the difference with Kyle is that he didn't create the situation like the Arbery's did, number one. And number two, at least with the first guy that went after Kyle, he yelled at him multiple times that he was going to kill him. Kyle attempted to retreat from this guy. He was actually running from this guy. And this guy ran at him and grabbed his gun. And then Kyle shot. And that's a pretty classic case of self-defense. Yes, WMDs. You got absolutely, Jeff. The WMDs in the Iraq War was a casus belli. I mean, look, when a country decides they want to go to war, then it's not about the decision to go to war is generally made. Oh crap. Well, sorry about that. There goes my light. Hold on a second here. Okay. Give me, we're going to take a 30-second break. Grab a drink. I just popped the circuit breaker here in my little makeshift office. I just popped the circuit breaker. This is going to make everything much more fun. Shit. Well, you know what? We're going to finish in the dark because in order for me to flip the circuit, my computer would die. All right, so we're going to finish in the dark. All right, you guys can still see me. So I think the Arbery case was correct. The jury got it right there. I think the jury got it right in the Rittenhouse trial with some pretty clear instances of self-defense. And I think the jury got it right in the Chauvin trial too. And that's based largely, I thought the biggest impact on the Chauvin trial was based on the medical testimony. And the several doctors testified that they believed the pressure on Mr. Floyd's neck was the cause of death, the inability for him to breathe. And it's really hard to argue that Derek Chauvin didn't cause that death in that situation when the doctor said that. Now, it goes back to intentionality or unintentional, negligence or specific intent. And that was the interesting thing about the show. Chauvin was actually convicted of an involuntary killing, a third-degree homicide. And I'll loop that back to the Arbery's and say I think there's also something to be said there on appeal for whether this was an intentional killing, because the jury convicted them of intentional homicide, at least the two McNichols, and I think it may have been a bit more appropriate for them to be convicted of a third degree homicide. But I didn't sit through the whole trial, and generally I defer to the judgment of a jury. But that's another issue that could be brought up on appeal. So I really think the appeal in those cases is going to be very, very interesting. It may take 5 to 10 years to play out, and by then the media may not even care about it. So those were just some thoughts I had throughout the day that I wanted to share here on a live feed. Thank you, Adam, for joining me. Erica's Adventure. This guy named Jeffrey who always jumps in and uses a lot of emojis. Thank you, everybody. For jumping in onto my feed. If you like my content, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. And like I said, I'm going to try to get some firearm experts together to come on the show, and some people with some knowledge of movie sets, so that we can get really in depth into what happened with Alec Baldwin. All right, everybody, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Sorry about the lighting here at the end. So I'm actually in my I'm in my basement, and I set up my little stage here. Okay. And the reason I lost power, love you too, Jeff. Love you too, brother. The reason I lost power is because I was running a little space heater and my lights and the computer, and it popped the circuit. It's happened before. It's no big deal. But I can't flip it without my computer going out and killing the live feed. So I'm about to do that in a second. But thank you, everybody, for tuning in. You guys have a great Friday night. All right. Peace.